Well, thank you for the invitation. And so far, the strike seems very comprehensive. Now, what, excuse me, what I wanted to do is first is I've seen the news where the Ayatollah has been targeted and killed. Do you have the same information? Uh, with this killing, there's actually several directions the war can go. It depends largely on a number of factors. First of all, it depends on the response from the Iranian security forces with the military um, and the Iranian Republican Guard Corps, and then secondly, it depends on the on where Iran wants to go with respect to immediate revenge, with respect to um, looking at the killing as an opportunity, if you call it that, for regime change or changing the direction, or if it will just create confusion and disruption within Iran. So it's too early to tell what direction it can go. Most directions would lead to a much worse situation, especially if there's several of the military and security forces personnel have direct access to launching more missiles. And that could inflame the situation to a very large degree. So the next 12 to 24 to 48 hours will tell us will bring us to a much better picture on where this might go. Right now, it can go in any direction. Well, for example, starting with Israel, Netanyahu had been very vocal about attacking Iran and eliminating Iran completely as a threat. At the same time, Trump has talked about eliminating a wide variety of capabilities Iran has, and he brought those and discussed those at the negotiations table, or his team did, with respect to ballistic missiles, the right to enhancing uranium, and a variety of other points that Iran wants to pursue. So when we simply look at the issues of the negotiations, those topics have not been addressed by this attack. Looking at Trump's recent history, he's largely driven by removing people in power and replacing that authority with U.S. businesses, U.S. interests, and U.S. U.S.'s own mandates over the country. In the case of Iran, that will be very, very, very difficult to do. So Trump has a massive military that he assembled in the region. This is an initial salvo, you might say, against Iran, and from all indications, Trump has just started. So let's see if somehow he decides to change his mind. But right now, I don't expect him to change his mind because he has his own ideas of where this situation should end up. Well, I hesitate to say what the United States wants because, especially in the last year, I have a hard time. I always find it challenging to reconcile United States goals with Donald Trump's goals, and essentially, U.S. policy keeps following Trump, But of course, as we've seen, Trump um, is known and has exhibited the tendency to change his mind or become very or to what I would say he lacks discipline with respect to his policy decisions. So where the United States wants to go is really is another way of saying, where does Trump want to go today, or where does he want to go in the last 3 weeks? Honestly, I don't really know. Well, one thing I noticed was that with respect to Iran, and I want to make it clear, I'm not a fan of the Iranian regime. So I'm I support actions that uh, that no longer allow the regime to be dangerous. Excuse me. However, one thing I noticed in the statements from the Gulf is with response to Iran's attacks, everyone's talking about Iranians violating the sovereignty of a wide variety of countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE, etc. However, I didn't hear a single person, single country make mention that the United States violated Iranian sovereignty by by launching the missiles. Now, again, uh, targeting Iranian missiles and the capabilities to create trouble throughout the region is something that I support. But I find it strange that nobody is talking about how in the middle of negotiations, Donald Trump decided to attack Iran, just like the last time they had negotiations. So in that sense, who's going to trust the United States in the middle of difficult negotiations if if Donald Trump decides that the best move forward is to attack the country and target the leader of a country? Well, it seems like both Russia and China have taken excuse me, have taken a very reserved position, especially before and even right now. They are not speaking loudly against any of the attacks, whether attacks on Iran or Iran's attacks going out. And with respect to the future of Iranian resources, especially for China, my sense um, is that uh, is that China, as they typically do, will step back and observe the situation, and finally decide once it looks like it may have an impact on their economy. That's where will assert themselves. They definitely don't want to get in the middle of a conflict, but they do want to guard their economy. Which scenario are you talking about in Syria? Yeah, actually, good. That's a very good question, because that's definitely a possibility. The I think the region needs to pay attention to one particular factor nobody's really talking about, and that's the Iranian people. And the Iranian people may see this as the ideal opportunity to take charge of the streets. Now, with respect to the Assad regime collapsing in a spectacular fashion, the Iranian security and military infrastructure is much stronger than Assad's was at the very end. So the the military and security apparatus will need to make, and leaders will need to make some decisions on whether they want Iran to continue to defend itself, or if they decide this is the right time for changing the direction of Iran. That will be massively significant if the security and military makes that decision, and if the Iranian people decide that now is their opportunity to rise up because the Ayatollah is no longer there. And so I see that as a difference between Syria and Iran. Syria just completely collapsed. Iran needs to make the decision with their forces on what direction they'll be going next. That's an interesting statement from Trump, because if he believes that he has the authority and power to create a new or assign a leader for Iran, then that creates a situation where the United States is suddenly playing a much larger role in Iran. You can't just assign a leader and then walk away. If you assign a leader, that means you also have to provide a supporting cast, you might say, or a support group of other political figures to ensure that the leader stays in place. And then with that, you need to decide what form of direction the government will take. What type of structure will Iran need? Will the constitution and is Trump volunteering to bring U.S. assets into Iran to actually do that type of work? So, although it sounds politically like a banner statement, essentially almost like a slogan to state that he plans to assign a leader, and I'm sure he wants to do that. There's no question. But getting involved in Iran at that level opens the door to a massive variety of actions that need to take place, and planning. You can't just do this overnight. Planning, funding, just how far is the U.S. plan to go? How far does Trump want to go? Or does he want to just assign a leader and then walk away, which would not be very helpful? Well, those are two great issues that people need to recognize. And I think in particular, Trump needs to recognize is that Iran's economy is destroyed for years of sanctions and other actions restricting the exporting of oil. The entire Iranian economy and the Iranian people have suffered massively due largely to the lack of value, to their money, and consequently, the economy needs to be, rebuilt from the bottom. So there's similarities with Syria, where Syria's economy was destroyed, and again, the West, in particular the U.S., cannot simply wish and hope that the economy has an opportunity for improvement. The monetary systems are working. Imports and exports start increasing. It takes more than that, a lot more than that, and takes dedication and the political will to make a positive impact on Iran. And I honestly don't think Trump understands such complexities. He always looks for the easy way out, but even by his own admission, he doesn't have the patience for diplomacy. He doesn't have the patience for spending time to find a solution. So, and that's not what Iran needs if we want Iran to be stable. No, you make a very good point. Is that the the worst case scenario in the Middle East is an Iran that starts to fall apart. And the impact on a faltering Iran is exactly what you said. You know, what you described essentially is that the stability will, or if Iran falls apart, that'll have a tremendous negative impact on stability. So the Gulf states and in particular the West and the United States need to be careful about where Iran goes next. And if the goal was regime change, then the Gulf and Trump must have a plan on where to go from here to keep Iran from becoming a worse situation and to maintain stability in the Middle East. Well, I'm not sure there any real plans exist, honestly. Is I've heard, especially coming from the White House, coming from the Trump, he always talks about plans. He always talks about what they've maybe what they've talked about or what they intend to do in a similar type situation or in very complex situations. But the reality often becomes that there is no plan. And we saw in Venezuela, for example, where he made the comment that, essentially, he boasted that with Maduro out, now the U.S. oil companies can come in, fix fix Venezuela's oil infrastructure, and then start pumping oil and make great profits for American companies. But the first reaction from American companies was, "This is too expensive. We don't want to get involved." And so very often Trump has plans that he thinks people will join him when actually they don't. They don't join him. Yeah, actually that's a very good observation because there's three commonalities for Trump when he's focusing on other countries. Number one, and these are focuses that gain his attention. Number one is oil, exactly like you said. If a country has a lot of oil, then Trump's interested. Number two are critical minerals. If the country has critical minerals, then he's willing to reach out and do something with that country. And then third, if the country uh, appears to have serious potential for U.S. business in those countries, then essentially those are his three priorities. They have nothing to, his priorities have nothing to do with establishing democracy, rule of law, any of that. It's all oil, minerals. I am not I'm not sure if Trump has actually consulted with other countries in the region regarding the future of Iran's oil and gas resources. You have a complicated situation, for example, in southern Iran, where the massive gas field that Iran has, they actually share it with Qatar. So access to that gas would have to go through Qatar, and it's not just Iranian. So there's a lot of complications for all the resources. Thank you. I enjoyed the conversation.